Rockburg Traffic Center, Jim Talamonte.
Well, the Veterans Memorial Tollway remains closed in both directions between Butterfield and Roosevelt with a crash and fire involving an overturned tanker. It was carrying propane full load. Northbound 355 is jammed. Ogden to Butterfield, where everything's blocked. Southbound, the backup extends to North Avenue. Northbound Tri-State traffic's a little heavy from Reagan Tollway to the Eisenhower, but that is one alternate there. Inbound Ryan, we see delays. Pershing to the Burn Circle, 27 minutes, 95th to downtown. Access to downtown has reopened. There are a few blockages here and there. Public transit is operating again. CTA is bypassing a few of the downtown stations. That's traffic. I'm Jim Talamonte on AM 560, The Answer.
Chicago's Morning Answer continues next in our 1-hour heating and air conditioning weather center. Morning shower or storm. Otherwise, we'll warm up later today. Clouds and sun, high 86. Partly cloudy and warm, 66 overnight. Clouds and sunshine, high 88 tomorrow. Rain and 72 officially at O'Hare. Next news at 8. Chicago's Morning Answer with Dan and Amy continues next on AM 560, The Answer.
This hourly segment is brought to you by Papa Nicholas Coffee. Papa Nicholas, best beans, best roast, best coffee.
If you're looking for the latest news, insight into what it means, and the sharpest opinion, there's only one station in Chicago where you can turn, and it's this one. We're AM 560, The Answer.
Top of the morning, Dan and Amy. Fox Business reporting U.S. private sector lost 2.7 million jobs in May. We'll get the official number on Friday, but that probably doesn't come as much of a surprise considering we've had 40 million first-time unemployment benefit filers in the last 10 weeks. For more on this, as the market keeps chugging along, we're pleased to be joined by Steve Moore, economist, Wall Street Journal columnist, author of Trumponomics. Steve, thanks for joining us.
Hi, good morning, guys.
Morning. So, what about a recovery that may be U-shaped, but not for employment, for profits, but not for employment? Is that a concern?
Well, what's happened with the stock market this week has just been amazing. In fact, the Dow futures are up to another 200 points this morning. I'm just amazed, given the chaos and the bedlam that's going on throughout the United States. Were the riots again last night in Chicago?
No, I mean, we had two protests, one at 2 o'clock in the afternoon and then one at Brownsville, and no reports of any looting. So that's a good
believe it or not, you actually, it's hard to believe, but you probably have better leadership in Illinois than New York does. that's hard to believe.
It's pushing it a little, I think.
But, I mean, de Blasio, did you see what the Mayor de Blasio said yesterday? That the riots in the protests in New York have been, quote, overwhelmingly peaceful, unquote. I mean, really? Have you been down Fifth Avenue? Have you seen the every store being destroyed and the burning and the shooting? And so anyway, I'm you can tell I'm pretty disgusted this morning with what's happening. By the way, I am more disgusted, Dan and Amy. Look, these are 18 to 30-year-old kids. They're a lot of them are punks. They've been locked up for a long time. Right. I had predicted for a long time that we would see these kinds of riots happening in the street. But what really disgusts me is where is the Democratic leadership? Where are the liberal voices calling for reason? They have been incredibly tolerant of this disgusting behavior. We've now seen more than 4 black cops doing their job, protecting the American people who've been killed during these riots. And where is the sympathy and empathy for them?
I know. It's and Stephen Moore, when you come back to Chicago and you see the television cameras cannot do it justice at the length of destruction that has happened on Michigan Avenue, on State Street, Gold Coast. I mean, Dan lives in there. Dan, he couldn't even get home one night because of all the roadblocks. But it's disgusting what they did.
Amy, I want to say something that, because as you guys know, let's see, it was Memorial Day, so that was, a week and a half ago. I was in Chicago by Buckingham Fountain with about 1,000 or so other protesters. We were protesting against the lockdown and the loss of livelihoods and the loss of businesses and the taking away of constitutional rights. We were, by the way, the left went completely ape blank over that. How dare these people take to the streets? Don't they know there's a pandemic? They're jeopardizing the health of themselves and all of the people in Chicago by going out and to Buckingham Fountain and doing this. We cleaned up after ourselves. If you looked at the pictures, and I have them on our website, people waving the American flag. There were no Confederate flags or anything like that. And yet now you've got the left. Have you seen one person in the media saying these people shouldn't be outside? Don't they know there's a pandemic going on?
I mean, we had 5,000 yesterday. They're sitting on top of each other, Stephen. I mean, this has been going on for 4 nights in a row. You talk about herd immunity. I think it's happening right now.
Okay,
Exactly.
so now back to my original question, because we have some concerns here beyond a handful of people engaging in violence, which is customary in Chicago. You have the prospect of a somewhat jobless recovery. I think there's legitimate concerns about that, number one. Number two, CBO now projecting that it could take 10 years for the economy to recover from the lockdowns.
That's right. So, I was avoiding that question, Dan, because that's so grim as well. So the CBO said yesterday that, and by the way, it's almost impossible to predict what's going to happen in the economy 2 or 3, 5 or 10 years ago from now, let alone what's going to happen 6 months from now. But their projection is that because of the lockdowns on the economy and the coronavirus, and by the way, I would say the vast majority of the economic destruction is not a result of the coronavirus. It's due to the political decisions to shut down our economy. They are predicting, I hope everyone's sitting down, that we will lose $8 to $9 trillion, $8 to $9 trillion of GDP. With that amount of money, we could find the cure to every single disease that's ever hit the planet. So you think about the immense cost that we've levied on not just us, but obviously then there's the debt, folks. I mean, there's the debt that we're surpassing. I don't know if you guys saw the piece I had in the Wall Street Journal on Monday, where I showed that government spending as a share of our entire economy could reach 52% of GDP. Right. That means that for the first time in American history, not even during World War II, when we were fighting the Nazis and the Japanese and there was all-out war, did the United States government and state and local governments become bigger than our entire private economy. This, by the way, Dan and Amy, I don't even think that Bernie Sanders, in his wildest dreams, could have ever thought something like this would happen.
And the posture in D.C. is, to borrow from Joe Biden, of all people, is we need to keep spending to stop from going bankrupt.
No, really. I mean, you can't make this stuff up, folks. I mean, you're right, Dan. I mean, the craziness of this. Now, our group, Committee on Race Prosperity, we're basically saying not a dime more spending. Stop the spending. The way I like to put it is, and in fact, I had a sign at that Chicago rally. Government spending is the virus now. What's doing the most damage to our economy, other than these criminals who have taken to the streets, is out of control government spending that has to be paid for. Look, one of America's great Chicagoans, Milton Friedman, who taught at the University of Chicago, taught us many, many, many years ago that government spending is not free. These people in Washington, they think it's free. Government can only give you, Dan, $1 if it takes $1 away from me. Mm-hmm. Right? I mean, there's no free money in Washington, and the same thing with the government can only give money to the states if it takes money from the states in the first place. So this idea that we're going to bail out states. Who is? People in Tennessee are going to bail out Illinois. Why? Why should they?
And so the question is, what is Congress's position on it? What's the White House's position on it with some of these dire predictions and some of those bleak numbers? Is there going to be a phase 4, and what does that look like?
Right now, the White House, I think, has taken a very strong stand, which is we don't need a phase 4 right now. Look, until these riots happened, I actually felt pretty good about things. We saw states like Florida and Texas and Tennessee and almost all the southern states except Virginia, which has a dunce cap governor. But a lot of even California was pretty. I think even Illinois was starting to open up, and then we get hit by these riots. And by the way, I don't know, I'm not conspiratorialist, but this pattern of behavior is making me wonder if there's something bigger going on here. But I'm not in favor of phase 4. What I am in favor of is a payroll tax suspension for every worker in America and every small business man and woman in America to increase employment and get people back to work. Because, Dan, the first question you asked is the most important one. How do we get Americans back to work? One of the reasons this rioting is happening is these kids don't have anything else to do.
Nothing else to
They
do.
don't have school,
Absolutely nothing.
right?
Yep.
They don't have to go to the job in the morning. They don't have to go to school in the morning. They don't have a training program. You keep 18 to 30-year-olds locked up with nothing to do. You're creating a tinderbox. So we've got to get people back to work. You get businesses open, and it's got to start tomorrow. And we have to start, arresting people and putting them in jail if they're creating these criminal acts. I mean, I don't know. I'm just so disgusted by it because we know the right course of action. It's get taxes down, get businesses open, and Americans are very resilient people. We can get through this, but not if the politicians are not allowing the business. How insane is it? You can burn down a hairdressing shop, but you can't open it.
Yeah,
Right,
I get it, and I get what your position is, but what's since you're close there, part of the troika, you, Kudlow, and Laffer.
Yeah.
Where is the White House on this? What is Trump willing to do?
Donald Trump does not want to spend a huge amount of additional money. Pelosi put out this insane $3 trillion bill that actually passed the House of Representatives with many Illinois Democrats voting for that third bill. But now you've got a lot of opposition in the Senate. But what worries me, Dan, is what Republicans tend to do is they say, well, okay, Trump wants $0 and the Democrats want $3 trillion, so we'll just spend $1.5 trillion. And by the way, I'm not talking about billions of dollars, folks. I'm talking about trillions. We're losing track of the zeros here, Dan.
Yeah, and so because the press is going to be on in the not too distant future. It was already on, really, starting mid-May, as these governors are passing phony, baloney budgets like Pritzker in Illinois. The press is going to be on. You got to do something for states and localities. That's what they really care about.
Exactly. And the problem is, the reason there's many reasons I'm so against any kind of blue state bailout of states like New York and states like Illinois. And by the way, what is the pattern of where the riots are happening? Where are the states bankrupt? I mean, it's blue, 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 blue.
Yeah.
Democratic-run cities and Democratic-run states are in big, 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 big trouble. And so the problem I have with bailing them out is it's enabling. You're enabling Pritzker, right? Every time he gives a press conference, instead of explaining how he's going to reopen the state, he trashes Trump for not giving him free money so he can keep the state closed.
Agreed, right? I mean, it's just all politics all the time. That's all you have to do here is to take an adverse position to Trump. Same thing in New York, same thing in California. You take an adverse position to Trump, and that absolves all other responsibilities. It's unfortunate, but that's, I guess, where we are politically, at least in some states.
And it's not just our governor; our mayor does it too on a daily basis.
Yeah, she's the FU mayor, right?
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, you saw that, Steve,
Well,
right?
But also explain to me how it is that we do have these racist police departments throughout the country. They're in Chicago. They're in Minneapolis. They're in St. Louis. They're in New York City. These are all cities that have been run by Democrats for 50 years.
Right.
How is it that you? And by the way, the answer to that question, I asked some of my Democratic friends, and it's so interesting. They do agree that there's a lot of incompetence with blue city mayors. But the other big problem is, Dan, that nobody's talking about?
What?
Union work rules. I talked to two police department heads who said we can't get rid of incompetent cops because of union rules.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, there's no question. I mean, it's just like any other public sector union in that
Right.
respect. There's no question. And there's
the two most important areas which cities help their citizens is teachers and police. And those two are so overrun by union rules and incompetence that the schools stink and the public safety stinks, and it's led to racist policies. The most racist policy, by the way, is not the police departments. It's the school systems that are depriving young minorities, kids, and families of a good education. That's the greatest travesty of all.
Yeah. He is Steve Moore, economist, Wall Street Journal columnist, author of Trumponomics. Steve, thanks for joining us. Appreciate it.
Okay, guys, have a great week.
You
Stay
too.
safe.
Yeah, bye, Stephen. And he joined us on our turnkey.pro answer line.
Hear about the big stories of the day, then talk about them right here on Chicago's